Like I said, I'm Detective Nice, just John. So, I've been with the Sheriff's Office for about 8 years now, and been pretty lucky with my career. Didn't spend a lot of time on the street. I went almost immediately to the narcotics division. So I spent 4 years with Region 2 Narcotics Task Force here. Mainly undercover with Sinaloa cartels here. So, yeah, surprisingly, we have a lot of cartel activity here in the area. There's 3 different cartels, but I'll get into that later. I spent 4 years there, and then our agency had a lapse in judgment and promoted me, and they made me a detective. So, very different than the narcotics part of it. Narcotics is a very reactive or a proactive type of investigations, and detective work is very reactive. We get our cases that come in through our patrol deputies off the street, and we work on them from there, whereas in narcotics, we develop our own cases. So the reason Don brought me in today is to talk about our violent crimes in the community. And some people know it, some of you know it, some of you don't know it, but this is a very, very violent area. We were top 10, one of the top 10 most violent cities in the US per capita, like the last 2 or 3 years. So it's a very interesting area. I came from back east. I grew up in Pennsylvania. And then coming out here is it's a totally different world out here. It's the Wild West, honestly. It's just so violent out here. And a lot of it stems from, yeah. A lot of it stems from drugs. I mean, that's what everything comes back to, drug debt or trying to find money for drugs. All of our crime that we have here, we can probably tie back to some way, shape, or form of drugs. In 2012, U.S. News and World Report actually sent a reporter out here, and they didn't believe the problems we had out here with drugs and violence. So they sent a reporter out here, and he actually got to ride around with me for a few days, and just showing him around and showing him, he was blown away. So there's actually a really good article about Salem County in U.S. News and World Report. In it, just, we got to take him along with us. I actually took him on a drug deal, but he had to stay in the car, but he came with me, and he liked that. But yeah, he just was blown away on how violent this area is, and how drug riddled we are. So we break down our violent crimes in the county into 3 different areas. We have the homicide, we have assault and battery, and we have DV. Anything DV is a domestic violence. So, and then there's a whole other area, and it's an ICAC division. ICAC is Internet Crimes Against Children. So everything falls into that, with our child porn and our crimes against children, any kind of abuse, whether it be physical or sexual or neglect.
And that's like a task force, right? We had Detective Blaya come and talk about.
Yes, we do have a task force, actually. And then we have one guy that all he does in that task force is keep track of all the registered sex offenders. And that's what your husband did for us for quite a while. So, and he was very good at it. So that's a huge problem in itself here. We have hundreds and hundreds of sex offenders here. I get calls all the time. People are going to buy a house, and they're like, "Hey, can you run a query and see if there's a sex offender within a mile of my house?" I said, "Yeah, there is. I mean, they're within a mile of everybody's house here." So it's just it's a problem. I don't know why. We have a lot of them that actually move here, and I I mean, I know why. I don't want to say why, but there is a lot here. So that's its own category that, and again, like Don says, we have just one task force, and that's what they focus on because it's such a big problem here as well. Homicides here, we take care of the homicides anywhere in the county except for the reservation. Anything on the reservation, the FBI takes care of. Now, we will help the FBI when they need help. We helped with the Ashland Mike case. Everybody remember Ashland Mike? Okay, so actually I have a story about Ashland Mike. We gotten a description about the vehicle that the suspect was driving. But we hadn't gotten a really good description of him. We knew he was early 20s, Native American male, but they were saying he had earrings, and they described a watch, a little boy, I guess is what they were saying. And so we had just found the body, and we were looking for this vehicle and this male. So myself and my partner at the time were driving around Farmington. We see a car, vehicle match description. We pull him over at a Giant in Farmington off of Broadway. And he's nervous. He pulls into the pumps, and I make contact with him immediately and just kind of start questioning, asking if he knows about the Amber Alert that happened, and why I'm contacting him is because his vehicle fits the description. He fits the description in his demographics. And we start chatting. So as we start chatting, I start noticing things about him and his demeanor. And I ask him just blanket questions. Is there any reason for any child to have been in your vehicle as we're looking around the vehicle? No, nothing. So on the side, it's dusty, and I see a child's handprint on the side of the van. So I pointed out to my partner, and we keep talking and look inside, and there's a little, be a young girl's purse in the back. I said, well, why would there be a young girl's purse in there? Oh, maybe it's my sister's. I said, oh, how old's your sister? 13. Okay. So there would be a child in here, maybe. Well, yeah. We started walking around, we're talking a little more. I notice he's got a scratch on his chin, and it's pretty fresh. I was asking about that. Oh, I don't know. I just maybe scratched myself. Notice he's got blood on his boots. He says it's oil. And just everything's not adding up with this guy. But we don't have a description of the guy yet. So I sit there and I talk to him and talking to him. We call our lieutenant. Our lieutenant's like, does he have earrings? Does he have this? Does he have that? No, he doesn't. So you gotta let him go. So I stood there for what probably seemed like, it was probably 2 minutes, but it seemed like 20 minutes to me just staring at the guy, telling my partner, I don't want to let this guy go. He's the guy. He is the guy. I know it. And we're just staring at each other, and my partner's like, we gotta let him go. So we let him go. Turns out it was the murderer. But luckily he went back to the reservation, and we caught him later that day. But it's just things like that we have a lack of communication sometimes, and it just happens like that. It was just very interesting that you find a guy, and this guy had just murdered a child, and calm, and he was nervous, but he's very calm. He's very, very good with his story, where he thought he was good with his story. We get lied to every day, so we kind of can see when somebody's telling us the truth, so we're not telling us the truth. But they're out there. I mean, they say that everybody is capable of murder. It's just whether you can control that or not. And you have the people that can and the people that can't. And, there's not a guy that's violent that, oh, you can just pick it. Oh, that guy's violent right there. You can just see he's violent. There are some people that are very calm and cool and collected, but they're the most violent people out there. But we do have lots of murders that occur around this area. The stats, I can't come up with the stats because of the reservation. We don't have those stats. But at one point this year, there were 9 murders in 7 days. And I'll bet nobody here heard about them. And that's just kind of how it is. Especially if they occur out on the reservation. it's just hard to keep track of, and they're not publicized. So good.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
In a situation like that, means the murder had just happened, and you had good reason to believe that he was the guy.
Right.
You guys can't hold him.
No. The Fourth Amendment is very. They take it very seriously. I can't detain a guy unless I have probable cause. I had reasonable suspicion, which is the level down, but I did not have probable cause to say this is the guy. I couldn't do it. And to seize somebody, the Fourth Amendment covers illegal search and seizures. And to seize him or arrest him, which is a seizure of him, I have to have probable cause.
So you can't even ask him, like, do you mind coming down to the station and asking
We could ask him
questions? Or
Yeah, we could ask him, but
it's not.
he can say no. So that's the whole thing about. I'll just briefly go over search and seizure. With the police, I can't. If say you're in the car with you, you're driving, you're the passenger. I come up to the car. I can ask you for your license because you're operating a motor vehicle, and I need to see that. That's my right to see that you have a license to operate that. But he's sitting over there. He's not doing anything. If I ask him for his license, he can say, pound sand. You don't have to talk to me. You don't have to do anything to me. I have no right to ask you. And if I do take something from you, then I've just seized that from you. And unless you voluntarily give it to me, I can't make you tell me your name, give me your license, or anything like that. I have no right, even as a police officer. Now, unless I'm conducting investigation on something, then I can, and I can go a little bit further. But again, I have to have more than just a traffic stop. So, but back to violent crimes in the area. So we have, again, we have 14 detectives in our division. We don't have any specialty units except for, like we talked about, the ICAC division. All the other detectives, we work on everything that comes to us. Then we have 2 that do a lot of the white collar crimes, check fraud, identity fraud, things like that, bank fraud. But other than that, but they still catch cases on burglaries, larcenies, felony. We only deal in felonies though. The misdemeanors stay at the patrol level. So we catch all kinds of cases, but violent crimes in this area, again, I mean, it could keep 2 or 3 people busy. It is so violent here. We recently had, last year I had a case that a 16-year-old was at a baseball game, and 2 other guys came in. They knew each other. I picked him up, and they were going to go buy some hash. And again, this is kind of that theme where we go back to is these crimes. It's all tied back to drugs, especially in this area. Now, the DVs and things like that, those are a little different. And we'll talk about that here in a minute. But this one, they were going to go buy some hash. The kid told the other 2 that he had $600, and they were going to go buy some hash. The other kid said, I'll kick in so much, and we'll go buy it. So they drive him out, and they actually take a turn and go out into the hills. And the kid, the 16-year-old's like, what are we doing? He's like, we're going to smoke it up a little bit. They had some marijuana they were going to smoke before they went and bought this hash. So they pull off to this road. One guy gets out. The other kid looks over at him, stabs the 16-year-old in the leg immediately. It was like, give me your money. So the kid is surprised. He doesn't know what to do. He's like, man, okay. Empties his pocket, gives him his money, they ask for his phone, give him his phone, and then they stab him again in the leg and force him out of the vehicle. The other guy is an adult. The guy that's stabbing him was 17. The other kid was 18 that got him out. They get him out. They have this metal strap, like a strapping band. It's about 1.5 inches wide. They have a torch. They take a torch. They heat it up, and they start torturing this kid. 16 years old. All they were going to do was go buy some hash, and they start doing this to him. They burn him, bad, up and down his back, on the upper part of his butt. And then they decide, we're just going to go ahead and kill him. So they put a bag over his head. Well, this kid the 16-year-old was a big kid. And as soon as they put the bag over his head, he started to fight and got the bag off of him. The other kid jumps on, tries to suffocate him as well. And he fights him off. And they tied him up with some straps to get out of those too. So finally they were like, this is a pretty big kid. I don't think we're going to be able to kill this guy. So they said, okay, we're not going to kill you, but show up tomorrow with another $600. You can have your phone back. And if you do go to the cops, we'll kill you. So the kid goes home, and 4 hours. And remember, this kid had just been burned severely all over his back with a white hot band. Stabbed in the leg twice, trying to be suffocated. And he goes home and doesn't say a word for like 4 or 5 hours. And finally, he just can't take the pain anymore. He talks to his mom, and he just says, I need to go to the hospital. What happened? What happened? You won't tell her what happened. They drive him to the hospital, find the hospital. She's like, you're going to tell me what happened. And he tells the story. So they call me. I go and interview him. And so we pick the kids up and interview them. And, of course, they lawyer up both right away. I interview the other kid. He tells me the story. And they actually end up charging the 17-year-old as an adult and the 18-year-old as an adult, too. So, I mean, they got torture, attempted homicide. And they're 17, 18-year-old kids. I mean, and again, all for $600 and a cell phone. So we, in this area, like I said, it's just amazing to me how little some of these people value life. And a lot of the younger guys, they don't, it doesn't click with them, the consequences or the finality of a murder is that guy's done. He's gone. That's it. And they don't get that. So the younger generation is the ones that actually scare me when I go out and deal with them, because they've got nothing to lose and they don't think about things like that. Well, what are the consequences, or what really happens when I pull this trigger? You know, it doesn't occur to them. So we have gangs around here, but they're not organized. We've got a lot of people that claim gangs, but honestly, the gang violence is not really a problem. So going back to what I said earlier, domestic violence. Now, domestic violence is a huge problem here. I'll define domestic violence is to be considered domestic violence, you have to be a husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. It's an ongoing relationship. So if you have a child with a woman and you got in a fight, you actually battered her. Battery is actually the act of hitting or causing injury to somebody. Assault is the threat of doing it. So you'll hear it on TV a lot. Oh yeah, he got assaulted. Well, all assault is a threat here. Now it could be different. They could define it differently in other states, but an assault is a fear of an imminent battery, meaning this guy says, I'm going to whip your ass. Excuse my language. All right?
They're adults.
Okay. And has his fighting stance on. He just assaulted that person. That person's like, yeah, I thought he was going to hit me. So that's an assault. And we can charge for that. Battery is actually him rearing back and smacking the guy. So, or putting any kind of hands in unwanted contact. So that's a battery. There's different levels of battery. You have an aggravated battery. Aggravated usually means it's with a deadly weapon or something. Even, it doesn't have to be a deadly weapon. It could be you beat a guy so badly that there's temporary disfigurement. His eyes were black. You cut him over his eye, caused him a scar, a permanent disfigurement with a scar, and those are charged as a higher felony. But going back to DVs, DV is one of the most dangerous calls that a patrol officer will go on because there is so much emotion tied up into that. Most of the shootings that you hear on police officers on calls stem from a DV call, from domestic violence call. They're not thinking right. They are so passionate about either their husband or wife that they are not thinking clearly. There is so much rage that you see when you come to these calls, because they're so emotionally attached to this person that that's where that rage comes from. And they're so violent. They're such a violent time and unpredictable. That's where the 3 officers in Palm Springs PD, the one was brand new officer. I think he was on for maybe a year. The other guy was about ready to retire. I think he was 20 days from retirement. And the other was a female officer, and she had just had a baby and was just off of maternity leave. Father and son were fighting, got into a fight. Son was unstable. The dad actually runs out of the house and was like, I'm scared. I think he's got a gun, whatever. And as they're walking up the front door, he picks all 3 of them off, kills everyone. So they get in there. I think he ends up taking his own life. But again, it's so emotionally charged that they're not thinking. They're not thinking clearly. I think that's how Vicky Chavez, have you guys heard of Vicky Chavez? She was a community service officer here, I want to say in the 90s. And there was a domestic violence situation going on. She was actually parked outside of the house. And the guy walked up to her and shot her and killed her right there. She didn't even go in. She was just sitting there waiting. And that's what it's just, like I said, it's just so emotionally charged that is our most dangerous calls that our officers go on. Being in narcotics, speaking of dangerous calls, I speak at the academy all the time. I teach the kids there on the narcotics part of it. I'll go into how, I went in undercover with the Sinaloa cartel members, and we're in these shady places, and we're having beers here, and we're in some trailer out in Shiprock, and there's guns, and these kids are like, oh boy, that's such a dangerous job. I said, well, not really. I mean, it is, it can be, but they roll up to a car 15, 20 times a day, maybe. They have no idea who's in that car. No idea. Is this guy coming from Ohio? Escaped jail, out for murder, says, I'm not going back. Or he's got a load of dope in there. If he gets taken, his family's going to be killed. You don't know. Every stop, they have no idea who that guy is. I know who I walked in on. I know that guy has a gun. I know there's 2 other guys with guns back there. I know if they find out who I am, I'm probably going to be taken to the back and they're going to chop my head off. I know what I'm walking into. They don't. So I always tell them, you have the dangerous job, not me. Like I said, I know where I'm going. So we actually, I bring up Ohio because I want to say last year, down in Los Lunas, or not Los Lunas, around Hatch, New Mexico. 2 guys were driving through. Again, a rookie cop stops them and walks up. And the first thing they do is open fire on them. What they ended up being is 2 murder suspects out of Ohio, stole the car out of there, robbed the people, killed the people in Ohio, was driving cross country to California, and just so happened to get caught for speeding. And again, it's like, I'm not going back. I'm going to take this guy's life. I don't care. They end up getting shot and caught. And I think one of them was killed. The other one was injured, but caught, and he's back in prison. But again, these guys never know what they're gonna walk into. So we'll get into the narcotics part of it, because again, like I said, except for the DV and the child porn, and some of the child porn and child almost trafficking or sex crimes here, they come from drugs. You have some of the parents or relatives, pimping out their kids for to get their fix, to get their drug money. And that's where I'd say 95% of the burglaries, larcenies that we have. Larceny is just the act of stealing something. It's when you actually steal something. Burglary is when you break into a house, you go into a place and rob the place. You have residential burglary, which of course is at a house, a residential house. You have commercial burglary, which is at a business. But I'd say 90-95% is all to, fuel their drug habit. And that's why we get tired of hearing some of these defense attorneys in town say, oh, it's a victimless crime. Drugs are a victimless crime. All they did was sell drugs to another drug user. Where's the harm in that? So it's how they got the money, how they got the dope, is where the victims come in. They rob, poor mom and pop shops. They rob the houses. These hardworking people like yourselves out there working hard, trying to, go to school, making your lives better. And these guys don't want anything to do with that. They want the easy way. So they rob you and take all your stuff and sell it or trade it for dope. And that's how they get it. We'll go into the narcotics part of it. Again, like I said, 4 years I spent mostly undercover. I did not look anything like this. I was, again, a lot different. But working with the cartels, I'll kind of explain how we do have 3 different cartels that operate out of here. But Sinaloa is the biggest cartel that we have here. We have the Michoacan family, and then the Gulf cartel we've seen. Zetas came up one time. The Zetas are the most violent of all the cartels. So how the Zetas were formed, Los Zetas, they did all the dirty work for one of the cartels down in, I want to say it was the Gulf cartel. They did all the violent work. They were these paramilitary guys that worked for the government. This cartel hired them to do pretty much their dirty work. All their killings, collections, everything like that. So they're doing all this work. They're getting paid nothing. So they started thinking, well, why can't we be a cartel? These guys aren't violent. We're doing all the violent stuff for them. Let's just form our own cartel. So they did. And they're mildly successful. I mean, they're more, like I said, they get off on the violence. So they're not businessmen like the Sinaloa cartel, the Michoacan cartel, or the Gulf cartel was. Gulf is being faded out. Sinaloa is pretty much taken over everywhere. There was another cartel back, I want to say about the end of the 90s, they really started to fade out. It's called the Felix Arellano cartel, and they were up by Tijuana. They were 2 brothers, and they had a cartel there, but they made the mistake of actually kidnapping a DEA agent, Kiki Camarino. They found out who he was, kidnapped him. For 3 days, they tortured him, keeping him just alive just to keep torturing him, and then finally ended up killing him. Well, once his body was discovered, they knew he was missing. They got the body back. It was open season on the Felix Arellano cartel, and it cost them their cartel. We went down there. The DEA, the Mexican government stepped in as well and pretty much wiped them out. Like I said, it was pretty much open season now. So they learned a valuable lesson, which brings me to the main point of the cartels. So again, like I said, being in with them, working with them, how it works is the cartels are pretty much a Fortune 500 company. They are a multi-billion dollar company, and they're run like a multi-billion dollar company. The Sinaloa cartel has, anybody know who's the head of Sinaloa cartel? He's kind of famous. Chapo Guzman. So Chapo was recently arrested, but Chapo gets arrested when Chapo wants to get arrested. My theory is Chapo gets arrested because he's in ties with whoever the new president is going to be. Makes the new president look good. Chapo owns the jails. I mean, he has his own cooks, his own cleaners, his women in there. It's a resort for him. So he gets picked up when he wants to get picked up. Now he's in good favor, makes that president look good, protects that president too. He has a protection deal with him because being a president of Mexico, or the drug czar of Mexico, is probably one of the world's most dangerous jobs. So, CEO of a company. So the CEO of the Sinaloa cartel would be Chapo Guzman. They have a COO, Chief Operating Officer. Now, the COO of the cartel, now what they do is they're in charge of the day-to-day operations, sales, distribution, everything like that. They have a CFO, which is the Chief Financial Officer. Again, just like any other Fortune 500 company, when you've got billions and billions of dollars coming in, you got to find out where to, one, to store it, two, where to invest it, three, where you're going to put it. I mean, this is a cash business. They're not depositing into a banking account. They're not paying with credit card. This is a cash business. He's got to find out where they're going to store it, where they're going to distribute it, what they're going to buy. So this guy, I think he has the worst job of them all, because that money is constantly flowing in. Also, they take very seriously money. If Chapo thinks anything's missing, then that's the first guy who loses his head. It's got to be the CFO. It's got to be the guy who's in charge of the money, taking the money, of course. So he's in charge of all the money laundering, just like I said, where he's got to store it, what he's going to spend, what they're going to invest in, what they're going to buy, everything like that. Then we have the sales directors. Again, just like a big company. So he's got to put people that we've got regional sales managers, we've got district sales managers, we've got local sales managers. So what they do is they take somebody, a family from Mexico, they drop them in these big hubs that we have in the U.S., Phoenix, back east, just all over. And they place these guys. And then they're the regional guys. And they have district guys. Albuquerque is one of their districts. So Albuquerque is connected with Phoenix. And then from Albuquerque, they're here. And they go here, they're Moab. They're all the supply routes all through. With drugs go east. Money comes west. So everything from Mexico, the dope is distributed here out in the west, and then it's transported east. So everything, all the interdiction guys that are running interdiction, they're catching dope that goes east, and they're catching the big money loads that are coming west. So with these sales positions, they'll take like Albuquerque. They'll take somebody and they'll actually bring it from Mexico and transplant them right here in Farmington, New Mexico. He sets up his sales throughout here with all the local people, so that, you know, the users, the people that do want to distribute for him, and that's where I would come in. And I'd find out who this guy was, and I'd start buying from somebody who was getting their dope from him. And then once I got a good enough case on that person, we do what we call flip. So I try to flip that guy, and we go to the next step and the next step until I got to the cartel member. And then I'd get in good with the cartel member. We had one guy here, and this is how it works too, is it's a cost of doing business. They know their guy is going to get arrested. They know. It's just that's what's going to happen. Eventually he's going to get picked up because they know these local people are going to flip on their guy. The reason I bring this up, and we'll tie this into violence, is if you'll notice, the violence does not occur here. Where the violence occurs is because they know the local tweakers are going to flip on their guy. Now, their guy is going to get picked up. We bust the guy. We take him down. We indict him federally. And as long as he keeps his mouth shut, which They all have. Every one of them that I've busted, not one of them has talked, because they know if I talk, or if they even think I'm going to talk, my family will be killed in Mexico. So that's where the violence comes in, not here. We create our own violence among our tweakers here in the drug net. That's where all of our violence comes from. When it comes to the cartels, they don't want that kind of publicity on them because that costs some money. So if they're in here and they start chopping people up here, they know it's going to come down on them, just like it did with Kiki when they did it to Kiki, even over in Mexico. They don't want that kind of heat on them.
So, could it be argued then that our community is a facilitator of the violence because of the number of tweakers and dealers?
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, this is how they get their dope is through stealing and robbing and killing. I mean, that's just how it is. You know, they think, okay, so we had a homicide 2 years ago, and it was two people who had a drug addiction, and their uncle had recently came into inheritance. Well, they, for some reason, thought he had the money at the house, which, I mean, that's just their way of thinking. They don't think very straight. But so they make this plan. They're going to go over to the house. They're going to kill this guy. And it was their uncle. It was the girl's uncle. Kill him and take his money. He had like $400,000 inheritance. So they get there. They're whacked out on meth. Go in, tie the uncle up, and beat him to death. I mean, absolutely beat him to death. Of course, there is no money there. It's in a bank account, which they can't access there, but they do get his bank card. They get $300. They kill this guy for $300, basically. We get the call. There's a gentleman that has breakfast with this guy every morning. They go to the Aztec restaurant every morning. Picks him up, same time, takes him in there. So he walks up, knocks on the door's open, and finds the body. So he calls us. So the good thing is we got a really good jump on it. So my brother actually was a detective at the time, and he got the case. And he just, I mean, he's an amazing detective, I'll say. So he started running on it, and we actually solved that murder in 8 hours. 8 hours. Now, luckily, the criminals around here aren't genius masterminds. So we immediately went to the bank, and how we got them was they went to Walmart and used it. Guys, I'll tell you, if you ever want to steal anything and try to get away with it, don't go to Walmart. They have the best security system and cameras ever. I mean, we can zoom in on it. I mean, it's just there. I pray that people commit crimes and go to Walmart. So, and they're very helpful there. I like them. So they actually went there, used the card at around 6 in the morning, and that's how we got them. So I tell a lot of stories because I like stories. So,
listen to you all day.
So the funny part about this is we catch the guy over at this house in South Farmington, and we're trying to find the girl who really was the mastermind of this, who planned everything. And I'm talking to my brother on the phone, and I'm leaning against my car, and we're talking about it, and he says, yeah, I just wish we'd find the girl. I was like, yeah, I know. All of a sudden I look over and I see this girl walking towards me, and I'm looking at her like, that's her. I said, hey, she's walking up to me right now. And she's like, fuck you. I was like, I swear to God, she is walking up to me right now. I gotta go. I hang up, and he's like, I hate you, you know? And so then he's like calling me back thinking I'm messing with him. And there she did. She walked right up to us. She was coming to that house that we were sitting on, and we were like, you're under arrest for what? You know? And so it was just funny that she just walked right up to us. But she had some mental problems as well. But I think it just stems from the drugs. But that's how they think, is they don't think about anybody else. They don't think about anything else, but I got to get my drugs. I got to get my money. So that's how it works. But back to the cartel violence. If they even think that that person, that their guy that they transplanted here is going to talk, then they'll make an example of their family. They'll go over there, and that's where you see the beheadings, the dismemberments, and everything over there. And it sends a signal to the family or to anybody else. And they send over these people. Some of them like to sell drugs. That's what they want to do. They like the drug lifestyle. And then there's some of them that are forced to come over here. And one of my first cases was with a guy, we'll call him Carlos. That's what we named him there. He had so many different IDs, we really didn't know what his name was at first. So I start working with Carlos. I start buying from him. Again, it's kind of it's a long process. And I had a family at the time. I mean, I still have a family, but I still have children. But I had a wife at the time. And it takes a toll on my life because I'm gone. This is my life. I'm in apartments. I'm in hotels. I'm in Albuquerque. I'm in Moab. I'm in Phoenix. This is my life. So I get in pretty good with him, and me and another agent, and he really likes us. So we start talking one day, and he does what we call, he fronts the dope. So meaning somebody comes into him, they want to get an ounce or two to sell. He just gives it to him and then says, just bring me my money after you're done selling. Well, it's not a very good practice to do because they're druggies. A lot of them smoke it up, or when they get the money, they buy more dope from somebody else and they smoke that up. So he was down probably 30, 40 grand. So I had the idea one day, and we were just getting ready to end this case because we had such a great case on it. I said, well, you want me to collect for you? And he's like, yeah, would you? I was like, sure. So now I'm a collections agent for the Sinaloa cartel for this guy. So we go around and we collect so much money from people. We go and we scare. It's just, it was fun for me. I enjoyed it. Scaring these drug dealers here, these small time drug dealers, to get their money back. They're scrambling. They don't know what I'm going to do. But I would do nothing to them as I'm a police officer. But still, it was a great role to play and collect all of his money. Everybody pays up. We get almost all the 40 grand collected, and then we take it down. So now I've got all of his dope and I've got all of his money. So it was a pretty interesting case. But he could not believe once they pulled him in. We actually arrested him right outside of Moab, Utah. So we had, has anybody seen that movie Sicario? Okay, so they brought that young FBI agent in so they could operate pretty much wherever they wanted to. Well, that's true. That's how it works. So we had a young female agent from the Homeland Security, brand new, just out of the academy. And we had her with us just for that fact. I could go anywhere I wanted with her because we had the federal umbrella. So that was kind of nice. So we bust him up in Moab. He's driving up a load in a Winnebago, and we take him down right outside of Moab. Bring him in a room. They start talking to him, and of course he's not going to lawyer up, or he's not going to talk. He lawyers up immediately. They're telling him, we've got a great case. You might as well talk. Of course, we try to get him to talk, but they're not going to. And then the other agent and myself walk in the room, and he couldn't believe it. Could not believe that it was us. And because he was like, you collected money for him. What do you mean? How can you be a cop? So again, he knew the deal. He knew you don't talk. His family was more important. They know we know. And, he did his time. He got 18 years federal. Federal time is different than state time. State time, they have good behavior, like 2-for-1 good behavior, suspended sentences, things like that. Fed time is Fed time. You get sentenced to 18 years, you serve 18 years. There's no parole. There's no anything like that for good time. That's what you serve. So we had another guy here that was just terrorizing people. And I got an anonymous tip, and somebody had finally had enough. And once I met the guy, it surprised me that we hadn't heard of this guy before, or we hadn't seen. I'm sure we have seen his handiwork, but we didn't know who it was. So I get an anonymous tip, and I start working it. They're renting cars here and driving over to Phoenix. So we the businesses here really are helpful with us. So we get to go in. They're going to tell us when they rent the car next, and we end up following them out to Phoenix and pulling the car over here. We get 3 pounds of meth coming back in, and the girl is like, "Yeah, I'm not going down for this guy." And again, she is petrified of him, but she says, "I'm not going to take the fall for him." She wants him to go down, which she was very smart in doing it, because I don't know how many probably unsolved murders, just people that will not talk. I mean, this guy was probably one of the most violent people in San Juan County. And he was that's how we knew that this guy was a serious guy, because we didn't hear about him. We heard nothing on this guy. Nobody would talk about this guy. So we got lucky, and and the guy who called in that gave us the anonymous tip, I still don't know who he is. He never would give me his name. He didn't want his name anywhere near this, but he was tired of this guy terrorizing their little drug community, which is funny, but it's just, he had enough. And so we flipped the girl. She gives us everything. She was like his inside person. She took care of paying for the storage units that he kept his guns and drugs in. So we had everything. So went in, I wrote a search warrant. I was in the judge's house at 3:30 in the morning getting this signed. And then we used SWAT. We hit his house. Guns everywhere, money everywhere, steroids. He was a big guy. These vials of steroids just everywhere in his house. So we hit his storage unit. He had 10, 12 pounds of cocaine, just piles of weed in there, the brick weed. And then more meth, more guns. We opened up another storage unit. He had 20-some guns. Many of them were fully automatic. All of them were pretty much stolen. The other ones that we couldn't prove were stolen, just didn't have any returns that came back to prove that they were stolen, but I'm sure they were all stolen. Ended up taking him down. And it's funny because you can see the effect of taking a guy like this off and taking him down is about 2 weeks. He's a pretty serious guy. If we start talking to our snitches and to our people that we're buying from, they're like, I can't get anything. There's no dope out there right now. So, which brings to the other point is once that starts happening, that's when it gets more violent, because you have more people, less dope, more people wanting dope, and now you've got what they call the cut. So what they call is when they'll bring in a couple of pounds of meth. Pound of meth you can get for probably $9,000 over in Phoenix. 16 ounces in a pound, you can get $1,000 an ounce if you cut it down, if you make it down like that, break it up. $100 a gram, there's 28.6 grams that you can get. There's 454 grams in an ounce. So, you do the math, you can get $100 per gram, but doing it that way, you've got to make 400 and some sales, which brings a lot of attention to you. You don't make as much profit, but they do what they step on it or cut it. And they'll take, what the most common thing is MSM. It's for joints for horses. And so they go to the stores. And now actually they keep that locked up because they know what these guys are using it for. But you get people to start doing that when there's not enough dope, they end up feel like they're getting ripped off, and the violence goes through the roof. we had one of these guys they're just robbing people. That the one year I think we had in the county that we worked on, I think there were 5 murders, and every one of them had something to do with dope. Every one of them. We had a guy I bought a pound from, went in undercover with him, bought a pound from him, arrested him, put him in jail here, and one of the judges let him out. 2 days after they let him out, he murdered a guy. So that's something we got to work on here. I'm not going to get into that here, but again, these are dangerous, violent people here, and it's everywhere in this area.
John, you said that the guy you were talking about from the anonymous tip with the growing clip, weed, meth, and cocaine.
Yes.
When you're working with the Sinaloa cartel, was it a buffet or was
No,
it specific?
It was specific for. I only bought meth from this certain guy in the cartel. What happened was, and as everybody probably in this room knows, once they started legalizing marijuana, the need for a Mexican ditchweed or brickweed, they call it brickweed, it's all packaged up in these bricks. It's shit weed. I mean, nobody wants to smoke that when they can go up to Durango and buy this, couch potato stuff or whatever, the Dr. Dankenstein up there. Now it's a lot more expensive. It's about $20 a gram. But I mean, it's good weed. I mean, really. So, not that I don't know. Here it's good. Like that. No, but it's good. So that kind of really took a bite out of a lot of their profits. Not being able to bring up all that weed. Nobody wants the Mexican weed anymore. And they know it. So they're a multi-billion-dollar company, so they adapt to it. So they bring China in to get their ephedrine to make meth at a larger scale in these huge factories that they have down there. So yeah, they get with China and bring in the boatloads of ephedrine so they can make it just mass quantities. So they just stepped up their meth production, and that's where they made up their profits. More profit in meth anyways. Now heroin, I got put on loan with the DEA up in Durango for a year and a half. And I got into a heroin syndicate that actually stemmed out of Denver. So started low again, had a CI, a confidential informant, CI, introduced me to a low-level guy and got in good with him. He, in turn, introduced me to his supplier, which was also in Durango. Got in good with him, which in turn led me to him bringing me to his supplier all the way in Denver. So I got his supplier out of Denver. We also got into some meth out of a guy we had been looking for forever. And I just got lucky one day. Told him I wanted to buy some meth. Some people down in Farmington here. I told him I was, my cover for him was I worked at the power plant. So I always tried to use something in my cover that's something I was familiar with. When I was growing up, I worked part-time out at the power plant, and I just shoveled coal up on the trooper deck for 10 hours a day, which was a crappy job. But it's something I knew and I could talk about with these people. If they ever asked me, I can talk about the tripper deck. I can talk about the cooling towers. I can talk about all this stuff intelligently to where they never questioned that I didn't. So I got in with these guys, and the guy was an addict. And every time I saw this guy, his name was Johnny. Every time I saw him, I just, man, Johnny, I kept telling you, you're dead, man. I mean, he'd get in my truck and he's on the nod the whole time. And on the nod is when he'd smoked and now he's coming down off of it. So he could barely stay awake. So they call that on the nod because he's constantly like nodding his head. So we get to Denver and take that whole area down. It was a great case. That was one of my funnest years working through there. But again, it just stems. But heroin is making a huge comeback. It's kind of off violence. So, but just to be, if there's parents in here, just be careful with heroin. I actually had a stepson, and he was actually a heroin addict. So it can happen to anybody. I mean, I'm a cop, and I have a son that got hooked on heroin, so it can happen to anybody. But what it is these kids were so used to having this OxyContin. OxyContin, tremendous painkiller. It's synthetic heroin is all OxyContin is. And it's the same, you get the same high, the same everything. But OxyContin got so popular that it became very expensive. So how they sell OxyContin is what they call point for point. So if it's an 80 milligram pill, $80 a pill. So it's point for point. You have 120 milligram, $120 for one pill. So these kids can't afford that anymore. So they turn to heroin. Heroin's about $80 a gram. You can get about 3 uses out of that gram. So, I mean, they're like, oh yeah, we'll do that. So they start doing heroin, and heroin has become very popular here. Very popular. And it's sad because the biggest people who are using it are these young kids, high school kids. So just be aware. Also the farm parties. I speak at the Aztec High School, and we talk about, these kids call it a farm party. They steal pills from their parents and grandparents' medicine cabinets. They don't know what it does. Throw them in a bowl. Kids go by and take a handful. And there has been so many overdoses because, of course, if you've ever been to the pharmacy, you stand at the window. The guy's like, hey, are you taking this? Are you taking this? Well, you can't take this with it. Well, these kids are throwing everything together. And of course, it's a recipe for disaster. So again, got young kids. Talk to them about it for one. 2, just be careful with your prescriptions because they don't know. Again, kids live for the now. They don't think of consequences, things like that. So just be careful with that. But we'll go back to the violence and cartels. Like I said, the cartel violence mostly is all down in Mexico. Where the violence comes from up here is when we get 1, low, 2, if there's the drug debts, 3, if people are, they start selling to different areas and they think that's their area, almost like a turf war. You sold to this guy, and that's my guy. And you see it. The guy, again, my guy that I bought the pound from, he was out, 2 days, and killed the guy that he thought was moving in on his territory, and just he smoked him. And then, it happens all the time. You see it. Now, there's one last thing I'll talk about, and it's something that just happened. So, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, with all the violence you're saying that's stemming from the drugs, do you see that within the local biker gangs?
Now, we'll talk about the biker gangs a little bit. So, right now, Hell's Angels are trying to make a move in here. We had the Bandidos, which was the main one up here. Bandidos, the little subculture of the Bandidos, the Bandoleros, you'll see more around here. They're the red and gold color. You'll see them up at No Worries. You'll see them all over the place, these Bandoleros. We don't have, again, a huge problem with motorcycle gangs up here yet. I can't believe that we don't, because we're such a huge drug hub. And I think, why wouldn't the Hells Angels or somebody come in? Now, I know they work on different, they have their, well, we're not going to come into that area because we've got these, our associates that are in here. But really, the Bandidos are, they're not known for being just crazy up here. But that's why I hear finally that the Hells Angels are going to make a move up here. So we may start seeing more of that, and they are violent, very violent. So as far as just that being a biker gang thing, FRMF is pretty much the closest thing we've got up here. They're not very police friendly, but honestly, they're not into much. They're just anti-PD. they build their bikes, and I leave them alone. There's nothing I have nothing against them. So, but yeah, as far as actually a problem up here or them distributing anything, it's nothing up here yet. But I see it. I'm very surprised that it's taken this long for us to hear that the Hells Angels were looking, or somebody like that, or Bogos, or anybody like that, any of the bigger clubs. So we may see more. So, but again, I'll go back. This is something that, and I can't go into a lot of details because it's an open case right now, but I will let people know, just so people are vigilant about this. I got a tip from somebody, a bunch of emails that I just started working with, and about where they started, an individual started talking about the shooting in Texas church, Columbine, the Las Vegas shootings, Sandy Hook Elementary. So I had heard about this guy before. He was just kind of a nuisance, going to some of the churches. And he kept on my radar, just somebody I kept in the back of my head. Well, then recently he started making these comments about these shootings. So started my investigation with the FBI. I worked with a couple agents with the FBI, and we started our investigation on this guy. We started taking it a little more seriously. We end up talking to a bunch of different people. He's had a grudge with an energy company up here, one of the oil field companies. He has a grudge with a couple of the churches. He's a very, after I interrogated him I interviewed him for about 3 hours, 4 hours. Very intelligent man, very intelligent man. And he's one of the guys that thinks he is the smartest guy ever, and everybody's below him. Called everybody that he's ever talked to idiots. They don't know anything. He's going to let everybody know what's going on. He had some very, very just messed up views of how to take care of abortion, calling for castration of all males. That was going to take care of abortion. Just things like that.
Start with himself? Or?
I was hoping. Yeah. So again, we took this guy very seriously after I started talking about these other shootings. Ended up getting his computer, looking through there. Every search on his computer was something to do with the shooting, the Sandy Hook shooting, the Las Vegas shootings, any shooting, even Ruby Ridge. And he talked about Ruby Ridge like we as agents didn't know about Ruby Ridge. And well, I know a little more than you think, I guess. So he had a lot of facts that were very skewed, but to where he would think they supported what he was trying to do. He thought he was going to be doing God's work. He actually made a statement that he admired, and again, this is his words, these are not my words, he admired the ragheads that drove through the crowds in New York City. He thought that was a fine Christian idea. I don't know what type of Christianity you're thinking of, but I don't think God would like that very much. So again, we took him very seriously, and this is a very recent case. So again, I'm going to ask that we don't talk about this. I'm just kind of letting you know, and I'm being very, very vague and everything still, but it probably will never even get out because I think we stopped it before anything came about. He made comments about, well, if just one person would have invited the guy in Las Vegas to the concert, all that shooting, all that death would have not happened. So I think it was a cry for help. I think he honestly was thinking, I just want one person to include me. And if not, then I'm going to start. So yeah, he looked at everything in there. He researched it. He researched our active shooter protocols, things like that. So he knew kind of how we would respond if he did something. So the guy was very, like I said, very, very intelligent. And Had no family, never been married, no kids, no nothing, just alone. It's another one of the guys has nothing to lose, nothing to lose. He's going to make his point. I think that's what he wanted, was he wanted to be remembered. And he wanted to be one of those guys that are like, oh, that guy, you know, we should have listened. You know, nobody would listen, so I made him listen. So he's not a threat anymore. We have him, so he's not out in public anymore. But again, that's a very recent case. Be very vague on it. That's why. But it's out there. I mean, it's here in our communities, to where it's everywhere. This guy could have gone into any of those churches, any little concerts, the casinos, anything to get his point across. If you're not going to listen, if you're not going to take me serious, I'll make you take me serious. That's pretty much how we took him as. So that's really all I got. I mean,
Really? So.
do you need more? I mean,
No, but so, well, two things. So Region was so exciting.
oh, Region was.
Why did you leave?
So Region started changing, and they got rid of some of our bosses, and it just seemed like it was time to go for me. And then the promotion actually, our retirement is based on your top 3 years. So if you're looking to make this a career, you really do need to move up. It was a great opportunity to move up at the time. There was a lot of openings. So I just decided to.
How much time do you have?
I've got 11 years left. I came in late. Yeah, I came in late in life. I'm an old guy. And yeah, I've got 11 years left. I've been on for just over 8.
So given all you know, if you stay the 11 years, will you leave? Do you think about that?
Will I leave the area?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Every day I wake
Yeah,
up and wonder
absolutely.
why I'm still here.
Yeah, no, I plan on leaving. I don't want to retire. They tell you should never retire where you work in law enforcement because you're so skewed on the area and people. That's why I want to, and I'm a warm weather guy. I grew up in Pennsylvania and I froze my ass off for, 20 years. And I lived in Tucson for a long time. So that's probably where I'll retire, is down there somewhere, Tucson, Palm Springs, somewhere like that. But I like the warmth. And again, just here is you get so jaded on the people in the area. And I try not to as a police officer. I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think I'm pretty good about it. But some days, you're just like, deal with these people. And I have to deal with the worst of the worst, when I deal with somebody. And I never deal with, and it's what a lot of people don't think about with police officers, is it's never happy. It's never a good thing that we're going somewhere. It's always somebody at their worst or the most violent thing you can think of. Children are the worst, and I do deal with them quite a bit, crimes against children. And it's the worst thing, especially as a parent. My kids are old and grown, but I do have grandkids, and I see, you can't help but picture your kids or your grandkids as these poor babies that are getting hurt. And I tell you, I had a case, and it was in the paper not long ago. And what happened was a father had his biological daughter and 2 other kids, and he would have them every weekend. Their custody was, he had them every weekend, the mom had them during the week. So that went on. They had been like that for 7 years. Well, as soon as the mom left, the dad started raping his daughter, his own daughter. She was 6 years old when it started, every weekend, every night. So this went on for 7 years. 7 years. The guy that's supposed to be her protector is the monster that he's supposed to be protecting her from. He is the guy. So one day they were driving home, and she'd had enough. He was abusive to her. both physically, mentally, and sexually. He was drunk. They were driving right by the casino, 55 miles an hour, heading to Blanco where they lived. And he'd started in on her, and she's like, I'm out. Opens the door, bails out 55 miles an hour. Tumbles down there, is road rash from head to toe when I saw her at the ER. Of course, the ER people here are very good. And the nurses start asking her, well, what happened? Why did you do this? Why did you do this? She doesn't want to talk first, and then finally she just is like, I'm sick of it. I thought he was going to hit me. I was tired of him hitting me, and he's been sexually abusing me for the last 7 years. So I get the case, run on the case. The guy has zero remorse. We finally take it to trial. Actually, the whole time in there, I have to get different search warrants for his DNA, things like that. I go out to the house. She explains where it all happens. I get the mattress. I mean, it's just a mess. The things we have to see, it can take a toll on you. You see this stuff every day. You hear these stories. I have to listen to her what they call safe house interview, which is a forensic interview. And she goes into detail and talks. At the time, she was 13. But it's talking about when she was 6, and the terms she's using, the sexual terms that no child should know, none. And says it with no problem. This is what he made me do. This is what I have to do. Blah blah blah. The whole thing. And you have to listen to that over and over and over to make sure you have every detail in your report and in your arrest warrants, so you get everything right. So the defense attorney can't come in and find a loophole to get a guy, this monster, off on a loophole. So we go to trial. He writes letters to the judge saying that I should be dismissed from the case because I'm not trustworthy and I'm under investigation, which is not true at all. I don't know where he came. He just was pulling stuff out of his butt. But, he never once referred to her as his daughter. Never. He always referred to her as the alleged victim. So the guy had no remorse. So you sit across from a guy like that at first, and you know what he's done. And being a father is hard to not come across the table at the guy and choke the life out. But we go through the court. We have the jury trial. It's 3 days. It's long. It's tiring. Everybody's beat, exhausted for it, and the jury finds him guilty on everything. So we have a sentencing hearing, and we go in, and the little girl talks, and the family talks, and I get up and talk. And the judge says, I agree with Detective Nice. It's the most heinous crime I've ever seen. Sentenced him to 342 years. So it's the longest sentence ever in San Juan County. So I'm very proud of that, because the guy's a monster. I mean, just like I said, this is the dad supposed to be protecting this little girl. So it happens like that. So it's a violent world out there, and these people, you never know. You never know who's, I guess, like I said, everybody's capable of violence. But you see it a lot, and dealing with the people in the area, I think that's, why I won't retire here. I'll get out of here and retire somewhere else where I don't know anybody, and I don't know just the bad, the bad.
Good for you. We are out of time, John. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
yeah, thank you guys. Thank you.